Good day and welcome to this DEKRA webinar about a new DEKRA certification mark. My name is Vincent Roes and together with my colleague Frank Thon we will tell you today about the new DEKRA Mark. Certification marks have a proven value in international trade and the number of products with a certification, bearing a certification, is increasing as well. One of the most well-known certification marks you might know is DEKRA, and that has been issued by DEKRA for a very, very long time. And after almost 100 years, we thought it was time for an updated certification mark. So this new DEKRA mark is a future mark for international markets to prove conformance to international technical standards, especially on electrical and electronic products. Also now we have the opportunity to issue one certification mark for multiple geographical areas, which is for sure a benefit, and my colleague Frank will explain it later on. In today's webinar we will start to talk with you about product safety, especially about risk mitigation, the different levels of risks associated with that. And next to that, the explanation of the new DEKRA mark in terms of the certification schedule, its technicalities, and finally how you can get the mark. So let me hand over to Frank Thon. Frank is Director Quality, Risk and Accreditation Management within the Global Service Division Product Testing. And Frank, please tell us more about the new DEKRA mark.
Thank you very much, Vincent, for the introduction, and also from my side, a very warm welcome to this webinar. Talking about risk mitigation, we're talking about levels of product safety. Let's start with the risk reduction level number 1, which is product testing, where we inspect or test products according to national, regional, or national requirements, but also partial or client requirements are covered by the product aspect testing. A higher risk reduction level is the type testing, which means we test a full test program according to the product specific requirements. The same risk reduction level is shared for certifications, where we're talking about the ISO Type 1A certification. Here we do evaluation activities such as testing, auditing, or inspection. In any case, we add an additional independent review and a certification decision to our activities. This means this is a full compliance check with product-specific requirements, including the construction. An ISO Type 5 adds to the certification the process assessment and market surveillance activities and forms therefore the risk reduction level number 3. The regular manufacturing process assessment and re-examination from production place and from the market are part of those schemes, including the right to use the certification mark within certain conditions, of course. There are more ISO types certification scheme in the market, which might form a risk reduction level number 4. This is the product ecosystem. Here, the regular assessment might include a supplier's audit or even additional customized aspects, which are per client wish very open to define. I would like to introduce the DEKRA Mark more closely, and the DEKRA Mark is an ISO Type 5 certification mark. This includes a type-tested product, a valid certificate, an annual CIG 23 factory inspection, and annual product examination. I will come to those points in a very short moment, but all those necessities and key aspects lead to continuous use of the DEKRA Mark. This DEKRA Mark is internationally accepted and recognized. It is the product passport for worldwide export market access. We have the possibility to integrate those assessments and re-examination into client-specific quality processes, and with this mark, we grant the use of a QR code or a numeric code to get direct access to DEKRA's CheckMe certified product page, which I will also describe in this webinar. A major item is, of course, the safety testing for the DEKRA Mark. So the safety testing is for the DEKRA Mark is performed according the IEC or EN standards. This is freely choosable, but of course the IEC standards are very global. The EN standards for the European market. The testing we have defined, or we use a very modular testing program, where we can offer 4 different options. Means we can either test in DEKRA laboratories or we can test at client test facilities, either executed by DEKRA staff or by the customer test facility personnel. And here, either fully tested, fully witnessed, or partially witnessed. All those options come with strict terms and conditions, as we have to meet as per the accreditation guidelines.
Frank, you mentioned this modular build-up and the different options for the testing program. In your experience, what is your recommendation to a manufacturer? What option to go for? Or in other words, what would you recommend as option?
All options come with many benefits, but also some limitations. Let's talk about the testing in DEKRA labs. Here, of course, it's a carefree package. You simply send the samples to DEKRA, and the DEKRA employees, well-trained, test in state-of-the-art laboratories. But of course, it has some limitation when samples, products need to be conditioned. Also, when software adjustments need to be taken during the testing. And this might favor the testing at client test facility. Also, of course, we need to have the right technician available and the right equipment. And here, of course, some time constraints might happen. When talking about testing client facilities executed by DEKRA staff, I would propose that when the client has a minor experience about the standard testing requirements, but the equipment is partially available, we need to have those software conditionings or even hardware conditionings during the testing. But here it's a very strong collaboration between the client and the DEKRA staff during the testing. Full witness testing, here the testing is conducted by client personnel. So these persons, of course, need to know their test facility pretty well. We have how should I say that? We have not the hardest impact into the client quality system as we have it for the last option, because we still do it via DEKRA staff, the witnessing, and here we can reduce the requirements onto the facility. Option D, witness testing of part of the test program, requires a very high compliance with the laboratory standard ISO 725, and we have to assess this once a year. We have the need for trained CTF personnel. But on the other hand, you get a high flexibility in test execution, because you don't have to wait until the DEKRA colleague is visiting the test facility. And still, you have on selected dates the full expertise in-house when the selected parts are really witnessed. So here, all 4 options are really valuable, but considerations about the product to be tested, as well as the capability of the own laboratory, will lead to the perfect option to choose.
Thanks for that, Frank. I think that gives a nice summary. So if I understand you correctly, it's let's say the delicate balance between the available equipment, the available of staff, the quality management systems, and how far let's say that is under control from in this case DEKRA as the supervisor or not. The good thing that I hear you say is that this flexibility is there, and let's say it depends on the availability of the equipment and staff. What is the best option? So please continue with let's say the explanation of the DEKRA Mark.
Yeah, Next to testing in client test facilities or testing in the DEKRA Mark, we can also integrate other options to grant the DEKRA Mark certificate. Either we see the DEKRA type test certificate, or we can accept DEKRA CP certificates, KEMA-KUR certificates, KEMA-KUR HAR, you might know for cables, ENIC Plus or CCA certificates are acceptable basis to grant the DEKRA Mark. All those options have at least two things in common. They comply with the applicable product safety standard completely, and the certificate is issued by DEKRA. In some instances, we accept also certificates, CB certificates issued via the IEC CB scheme when the report and certificate is issued by another NCB. Main aspects of the certificate are, next to the applicant and licensee, the product, trade names, also the models we certify. We identify the product requirements we certified against. And last but not least, the mark itself with the statement number and the valid QR code. An integral part of the DEKRA Mark is also the factory inspections, means the surveillance of this of the usage of the mark. Means once a year we conduct a factory inspection according CIG 23, which are the Senelec inspection guidelines. So by adopting those CIG guidelines, we can combine multiple inspection requirements in one inspection, such as North America. These inspection guidelines cover multiple aspects, such as supply chain control, but without any audit, production control, monitoring and routine tests. We do functional check of the measurement equipment. We also have a look into the quality management system of the production location, and of course, many other aspects.
On the factory inspections, I have a question for you. You mentioned the possibility to combine the requirements, European requirements, IEC requirements. I remember in your introduction you also talked about the US. Can you say something about that, about, let's say, the possible benefits to combine those different inspections?
Of course. Also, even though North America has, in a lot of aspects, a different approach on market and safety requirements, we as DEKRA, we combined the surveillance requirements for the North American market to a very large extent with the European or the Senelec inspection guidelines. So basically all those supply chain control, production control, quality management aspects are equally or identical to the North American market, or to both schemes. Also, the calibration, verification of test equipment, periodic testing of sub-assemblies, all those items are comparable at least, sometimes even identical when we talk about fully harmonized standards or standards with, which are harmonized to a very large extent. Also, review of complaint handling is identical. So, we really achieved to a large extent to combine all those requirements, even though North America requires more than one inspection per year. But at least this one inspection per year we can combine, and therefore we can reduce the amount of total assessments of the factory.
I think that's a very important element you mentioned there, Frank, because it has a cost implication, a benefit for the customer as well. But I really like what you said afterwards in terms of, let's say, reducing the number of inspections, because we know from our customers that it's not always very welcome when an inspector visits the factory. It's a disturbance of the process. It's a disturbance of everything, basically. It needs to be done. So if we can have less inspections or combined inspections, there's also less hassle for customers. So that's quite an interesting benefit that we can provide for that. So yeah, please continue, Frank.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct, Vincent. And of course, as mentioned, the North American requirement is very strict in the amount of inspections. But we have another webinar for that. But of course, for the rest of the world, we can combine, and then the majority is covered. Another aspect of the surveillance is the re-examination of certified products. This is meant to map and monitor the stability of the production of the product. Means we touch really the lifetime of a product, from the very first to the very last product manufactured. And as being an accredited body, we have also criteria to store information much longer than the very last product manufactured. So here we take selected samples either from the inventory, stock, or even from the market. They are labeled for reference and sent to the DEKRA laboratory to compare the initial tests with the re-examination tests. So really, we can compare those results and give the market or give the client to a large extent a risk mitigation tool with such a type 5 certification scheme.
Actually, when you say that, Frank, a mitigation of risks and a tool for the quality system, it also comes to mind that probably one of the things is that it is a powerful addition to the manufacturer's quality management system, because this re-examination is constantly monitoring the quality as well. Anything, let's say, you want to comment on that?
Yes, absolutely, Vincent. Of course, DASA type 5 can be used in the risk assessment for each product. We all know, for example, CE is a self-declaration, but as part of the self-declaration, you as a client, as a manufacturer, you need to conduct a risk assessment, and you have to make risk mitigation activities to reduce the or to strengthen the safety of products. And here, with this re-examination, you really go into another level of risk mitigation, as an independent third party is testing the products again and again and again. And if it comes to an unsafe or even deviating product on the market, then we as a certification body are informing our client and the manufacturer, and they can immediately start to do mitigation and corrective actions. So yes, indeed, this type 5 can be used very strongly in the CE self-declaration package.
Frank, I think that's a welcome addition to what you just were saying, and I think a welcome addition as well as a benefit of certification marks in general, especially also the DEKRA mark. So what is needed to get the mark? So I think over to that next topic that you have on your list.
Actually, what we need to get the mark is, next to the testing, also the evaluation. To maintain the mark, it's the surveillance and re-examination. But of course, it's very important that the mark is granted and can be reviewed by actually the public. And we developed the DEKRA Check Me site. Here, each DEKRA Mark product has a unique identifier with a certificate number, with a QR code. And by scanning the QR code, you get a direct link to that website, to the applicable certificate, which was scanned, identifying the type of the certificate, identifying whom issued that certificate. In this case, it's DEKRA Certification BV for the DEKRA certification mark. Also, the date of certificate is identified, and as we use the site for multiple services, there's also a certificate expiration date identified, which is not valid actually for the DEKRA mark, as by surveillance, the date of expiration is it's unlimited. Again, the standards applied, the company name, some product descriptions are shown. So the main content of the certificate is reflected at this public available site. Vincent, in his introduction, also mentioned the key marker, the very well known, which was valid, or which we used for almost 100 years. And existing key marker contracts remain valid for our clients, and new products can be added to these existing contracts. However, as of 2020, only new DEKRA Mark contracts can be signed. So for existing clients, there is no change. For new clients, we cannot issue a key marker as of 2020, but nothing to worry about, as basically we have the same processes in place. We have the same level of risk mitigation, with both are a Type 5 certification scheme. But in addition to the previous used key marker certification mark, we now have this connectivity with the QR code and this product info page, Check Me, which I just shared. And even more important, we can integrate it with other international schemes, as for the US or Canada, as we utilize similar approaches, not only in the surveillance, but also in the testing processes. How to get the mark? This flexible mark to cover more than only the European requirements. So we can add additional requirements to this scheme. We can cover it under our roof, so DEKRA Mark. We can generate it very cost effective by combining a lot of different aspects. We have those flexible testing solutions to meet really our client needs. And this is, I think, one of the most valuable solutions of that scheme, next to the combination of mandatory inspections for different regions. And of course, we can make it part of the client quality control. So in the discussion, we can give, of course, guidance how this scheme can be implemented into the quality control for a certain product as a risk mitigation.
This brings us at the end of the webinar. Thanks, Frank, for the explanation. I'm triggered by the QR code, which you explained a couple of minutes ago. I know from discussion with customers that sometimes handling customs is difficult in terms of getting information about registered products. So having this QR code connected to the DEKRA Mark actually is an advantage and a benefit for them. Can you tell something about that, or give an example in relation to export and customs?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Vincent. We got already remarks from our clients that importing goods into different regions is very much supported by the usage of this QR code, as border control at any time can scan the product or the packaging container and verify that they have a valid certificate available for a certain product. So border control actually loves QR codes, as it's available 24/7. And these QR code is not only referring to a certification search site, it's referring directly to the product site only for this specific product, to the most actual certificate. So it stays stable to the product, not only to a certificate. So whenever the certificate is updated, the QR code remains the same and is linked to the most actual certificate. And this is another really, really valuable aspect, as certificates or goods which are shipped and they are on the ship for several weeks, they still refer to the right certificate, even though the certificate is updated for a new batch of products. Furthermore, the certificate website is available 24/7, so the complete time for researching the fitting certificate at client laboratories or at client facilities, at licensees, or even at the certification body is completely waived, because the internet never sleeps, and you can always access the most actual certificate content, basically.
Thanks for that, Frank. I think that's clearly an additional benefit and an additional, let's say, goodie that is connected now to the DEKRA Mark. Thank you very much for your explanation about the DEKRA Mark. I hope it was, let's say, useful, interesting for your viewers on this introduction on the DEKRA Mark. And please check our websites for new webinars coming up. Thanks again, Frank, and see you next time.